The GPS unit died with a pathetic beep. The screen flickered once, showing static instead of a map, and then went black. "That's the third one!" Declan shattered over the howl of the wind. He slapped the frozen device against his glove, then shoved it into his parka pocket. "Magnetic interference is off the charts. We're flying blind, Clara. We're not blind." I adjusted my snow goggles, squinting against the blinding whiteness of the Swiss Alps. "We have the original source." I pulled Father's diary from my inner pocket. The leather was warm from my body heat. Here, at an altitude of 3,000 meters, where the air was thin and sharp as broken glass, ink on paper was more reliable than satellites. "The coordinates point to the north face," I yelled, pointing toward a sheer wall of granite and ice that disappeared into the storm clouds above. 50 meters forward, Declan looked at the wall, then at me. His beard was frosted over, making him look like a mythical creature of the winter. "There's nothing there, Clara, just rock and death. If we climb that in this storm, we won't come down. We don't need to climb it. We need to look at it." We trudged forward, knee-deep in snow. My muscles burned. It had been 6 months since Ouroboros, since the tower fell. 6 months of hunting, decoding, and chasing ghosts across Europe. We were harder now. My hands were calloused, and Declan moved with a predatory grace, even in heavy snow gear. But the Alps didn't care about our history. We reached the base of the cliff. The wind here was ferocious, swirling in a vortex that felt unnatural. It didn't just push, it vibrated. I ran my gloved hand over the rough stone. "Here," I whispered, checking the sketch in the diary. "The arch, I see cracks." Declan leaned close, shielding his face. "I see ice. I don't see a door. It's not a door made of matter. It's a door made of energy." I took off my heavy mitten, wincing as the cold instantly bit into my fingers. I pulled the brass loop from under my layers. The glass was cracked, a scar from the lightning strike that killed Silas Crow. But for this, I didn't need magnification. I needed a filter. "Father wrote about the veil," I muttered, holding the loop up to my eye. "A refractive index that doesn't exist in nature." Through the naked eye, the air in front of the rock face looked like swirling snow. But through the cracked lens of the loop, the world shifted. I saw it. A shimmer, like heat haze on asphalt in July, but vertical. It pulsed with a faint violet rhythm. The snowflakes didn't pass through it. They dissolved on contact. "Declan," I grabbed his arm. "Look at the air. 3 feet to the left of that fissure." He squinted. "It looks distorted, like a gas leak." "It's the entrance." He looked at me, then at the shimmering void. "And if it's just a crevice, then we hit the wall and freeze to death." But the diary hasn't lied yet. Declan exhaled. A cloud of steam instantly whipped away by the wind. He unclipped the safety on his rifle. Habit, mostly, since bullets don't stop avalanches. "Ladies first," he grumbled, but his hand tightened protectively on my shoulder. I took a breath, stepped forward, and closed my eyes. I walked into the stone. There was no impact. Instead, there was a sensation of falling upward. My stomach did a somersault. A sound like a tearing bedsheet shrieked in my ears, followed by a popping silence that hurt worse than the noise. The cold vanished instantly, replaced by a wave of heavy, humid warmth. I stumbled and fell onto soft, damp earth.
"Clara."
Declan crashed beside me, rolling over. We lay there for a second, gasping. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I opened my eyes. The white blindness was gone. The howling wind was gone. We were lying on a carpet of moss and purple heather. Above us, the sky was a deep, impossible indigo, twilight-colored, though it had been noon a minute ago. The air smelled of ozone, damp soil, and roses. It was warm, spring warm.
"What the hell?"
Declan sat up, ripping off his goggles. He stared around, his mouth slightly open. We were on a ledge overlooking a valley that shouldn't exist. It was surrounded by the high Alps, but here, inside the bowl, there was no snow. And in the center of the valley lay the city. It was breathtaking, sprawling and vertical, climbing the slopes like ivy. Towers with copper roofs, bridges connecting spires, gas street lamps glowing with a soft, eerie blue light. It looked like a picture from a history book, but sharper, brighter. Chimneys puffed white smoke, steam, not coal soot. And everywhere there was the color blue. Cobalt banners, cobalt glass in the windows, cobalt tiles. Ethelgard. I whispered the name from the diary. The city of the Cobalt Mask. "It looks intact." Declan stood up, scanning the perimeter. "And inhabited. Look at the movement on the bridges."
I pulled out my binoculars. My hands were shaking, and not from the cold. I focused on the nearest bridge, about a mile down. Carriages, horse-drawn carriages with lacquered sides, people walking in top hats, bustles, and long coats. No cars, no power lines. It's a preservation society, Declan guessed, lowering his rifle. Like those colonial villages in Virginia? Actors? I moved the binoculars to a large structure near the city gates. A clock tower. The hands showed midnight, but the sun, or whatever light source illuminated this place, suggested twilight. And then I saw the banner hanging from the gatehouse. Autumn Ball, 1899. It's not a reenactment, Declan. I lowered the binoculars, feeling a cold deeper than the blizzard settle in my gut. Father's note said the generator distorts causality. Look at the edges of the valley. He looked. Where the green valley met the snowy peaks, the air shimmered violently. The world outside was blurred, like a bad watercolor. We aren't just in a hidden valley, I said, looking at my modern Gore-Tex parka, which suddenly felt like a neon sign screaming invader. We just walked into yesterday. Declan looked at his watch. The digital face was blank, dead. He looked down at the city, then at me. Then we better find some costumes, he said grimly, because right now we stick out like a sore thumb. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled. 13 times.
We buried the 21st century under a pile of stones in a shallow grotto half a mile from the city wall. Orange parkas, membrane trousers, GPS navigators, tactical flashlights all went into the dark niche. Outside remained only Declan's rifle. He wrapped it in an oiled rag and hid it separately for a rainy day, and my tool belt. I couldn't part with it. I hid it under layers of thermal underwear, which we decided to keep. I feel naked, Declan grumbled, shivering in the warm, humid wind. He was left in jeans and a sweater. For Ethelgard, he looked like a barbarian in rags. You'll look worse if we walk into the city in Gore-Tex, I replied, covering the grotto entrance with heather branches. It's an anachronism. They'd burn us as witches or lock us in a cabinet of curiosities. We moved down the slope, keeping to the shadows of the cypress trees. The valley smelled dizzyingly sweet, a mix of night violets and something chemical, reminiscent of photo-developing fluid. Soon, the road appeared. Cobblestones, perfectly fitted, gleamed under blue gas lamps. Quiet, Declan jerked my arm, pulling me behind the trunk of an old oak. A patrol was moving down the road. There were 3 of them. Tall, unnaturally thin figures in long blue greatcoats with gold epaulets. They marched in step, but the rhythm was wrong. The sound of boots on stone was too sharp. Click, 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 click. No shuffling, no variation. When they drew level with us, I saw their faces. White, smooth, motionless. They were masks. Porcelain visages with painted blush and empty sockets where a dim blue light burned. Toy soldiers. Declan whispered right into my ear, his body tensed. Think there are people inside? Listen to the sound when they turn their heads, I whispered back. One of the guards turned his head toward the forest. A quiet, dry, grinding sound drifted over, like a cup rubbing against a saucer. Ceramics, I stated. Ball and socket joints. They are automata, or Victorian-style cyborgs. The patrol passed. The air behind them smelled of ozone and gun oil. We needed a disguise. We found it on the outskirts, in a district resembling the service yard of a vast estate. A laundry, a low brick building with steam billowing from its pipes, smelling of lavender soap. In the yard stood a van with a covered top. On the side, in gold lettering, Royal Laundry, purity is the key to eternity. There, I nodded at the rear doors of the van. The lock was a simple padlock. Declan looked around. The yard was empty, save for a strange kennel by the gate, from which came a low growl, the sound of a boiled spring ready to snap, a mechanical dog. I'll distract the dog if it wakes up, Declan said. Work fast. I pulled out my lockpick, a thin hairband I always wore. 2 movements, a click. The shackle popped open. Inside the van hung rows of clothes in garment bags. Bingo, I exhaled, climbing inside. The next 10 minutes were a mix of panic and farce. In the cramped space of the van, smelling of starch, we tore off the remnants of modern clothing and pulled on someone else's life. I ended up with a dress of dark green velvet, heavy as a knight's armor.
Damn, I cursed, trying to fasten the hooks on the back. Who invented this torture? Need help? Declan was already clad in black trousers and a white shirt with a high collar. He looked frighteningly organic. With his height and scar, he looked like a Byronic hero stepped off the pages of a novel. He turned me away from me. His fingers, used to weapons and yokes, handled the intricate corset lacing with unexpected dexterity. Inhale, he commanded. I inhaled. He pulled the laces tight. My ribs were compressed by a steel ring. More, he said ruthlessly. I won't be able to breathe. You don't need to breathe deeply. You need to look like a lady. He tightened the knot. Otherwise, they'll figure us out. I turned to him. He held a black frock coat and a neckerchief. Tie this for me, he asked, handing over the silk. I know how to tie nautical knots, not bows. I adjusted his shirt collar. My fingers brushed his neck. His pulse beat steadily. In the gloom of the van, we stood illicitly close. In these clothes, restricting movement, the tension between us changed. It became thicker, forbidden. You look convincing, I said, tightening the knot of the cravat. You look like you're planning to poison someone, he smirked, putting on the frock coat. Let's go, before the carriage turns into a pumpkin.
We stepped out onto the streets of Ethelgard. The city was overwhelming. Houses with peaked roofs loomed over narrow streets, creating artificial canyons. Shop windows glowed, pharmacy of time, workshop of eyes, salon of illusions. But the strangest thing was the people. There were many of them. Couples strolled arm in arm, carriages rattled by. Laughter, music from open cafe doors. Life was bustling. But when we stepped onto a small square with a fountain, I felt a chill run down my spine. Declan, I whispered, squeezing his elbow. Look at them, closely. A lady with a lace parasol passed by. Her face was hidden by a half mask of feathers. A gentleman reading a newspaper on a bench. Venetian bauta. A group of officers, smooth white masks covering their entire faces. A child running after a hoop. A mask shaped like a cat's face. Here, no one showed their faces. Is it a fashion? Declan asked, tensing up. It's the law, I realized. We are the only ones. Bong. The clock on the town hall struck the quarter hour, and as if on command, everyone in the square stopped. Conversation ceased. Dozens of heads turned in our direction. Glass, painted, empty eyes stared at us. We stood in the middle of the crowd, in perfectly fitting clothes, but with absolutely naked, obscenely living faces. A gendarme separated from the wall, a tall figure in a crested helmet and a blue mask frozen in a scream. He raised a baton, the tip of which sparked with electricity. Citizens, the gendarme's voice sounded like a grinding gramophone. Identity protocol violation. Level 1. Present your visages. Declan slowly moved his hand behind his back to where his gun used to be. Now it was empty. Seems we forgot the dress code, darling, he said loudly, looking at the gendarme. Run, I asked with just my lips. Nowhere to run, he replied, scanning the exits from the square. The ring of masks was closing everywhere. The gendarme took a step forward. Faces, he rasped. Where are your faces? Are you empty?
The electrical discharge at the tip of the gendarme's baton buzzed like an angry wasp. Blue light reflected in his empty, lacquered eye sockets. Subjects unidentified, he rasped, taking a step forward. Purge protocol. Declan tensed. I saw his hand slip to his belt, searching for a knife that wasn't there. He was going to fight. Bare hands against a steel chassis under voltage? It was suicide. Wait! I stepped forward, shielding Declan. It's a mistake. Mistake impossible. Flesh is exposed. It is obscene. The baton swung up. The crowd of masks around us gasped in unison, a sound like the rustling of dry leaves. Oh, for the gear's sake, Sergeant, lower your stick. The voice was high, sharp, and came from the shop window directly behind us. The doors flew open and a short man rolled out onto the cobblestones, or what seemed to be a man. He was dressed in a motley vest hung with measuring tapes and loops. His face was hidden by a mask in the shape of a sly fox snout with a monocle. Are you trying to ruin my best material? The fox ran up to the gendarme, completely unafraid of the electricity. He poked a finger into the officer's chest. These two are my clients. Urgent order for the ball. Came for a fitting, but as you can see, got lost.
The gendarme froze. His head twitched, processing data. They have no visages. The law states that everyone must appear at the ball in perfect condition, the fox interrupted, and you intend to leave bruises on their, raw material. Who will answer to Magister Valerius? You? You don't even have a faceplate, just a stamping. Valerius's name acted like a shutdown code. The gendarme lowered his baton. Client status confirmation. Inside, the fox grabbed my hand. His grip was hard, fingers cold and firm as wood. Quickly, before his processors overheat again.
He pulled us into the doors of his shop. Declan tumbled in after, and the fox immediately slammed the heavy leaf shut, turning the key and lowering the blinds. The street noise vanished. We were in silence, smelling of turpentine, varnish, and old powder. I looked around and barely suppressed a shiver. This wasn't a shop. It was a crypt. The walls from floor to ceiling were lined with shelves, and on every shelf stood heads. Porcelain, wood, velvet, copper, female, nail, beastly. Hundreds of empty eyes watched us from the gloom. Some masks were unfinished, mere wireframes. Others looked so realistic it seemed they were about to speak. "Welcome to Renard's atelier," the fox took off his mask. Underneath was the face of an elderly man with a sharp goatee and keen, watery eyes. At his temple ticked a tiny mechanism embedded under the skin. "You are insane," he said calmly, walking to the workbench. "Walking around Ethelgard naked." "We aren't naked," Declan grunted, adjusting his rock coat. "Oh, believe me, for the locals, seeing moving lips and nostrils is like seeing your entrails. Vulgar, physiological," Renard gasped. "You are outsiders. I can smell time on you. It is fresh. You didn't turn us in." I walked to the counter. "Why?" "Because I am a merchant, madam, and outsiders are currency." He picked up a caliper from the shelf. "You have something this place hasn't had for a long time. Living micro-expressions. Real wrinkles from fear. I want to copy them." "You want molds of our faces?" Declan clarified. "I want data. I will scan your mimicry. In return, I will give you masks that will allow you to enter the ball and not be arrested in 5 minutes. And a legend." I exchanged glances with Declan. We had no choice. "Deal," I said. "Excellent." Renard rubbed his hands. "Sit before the mirror. Choose." For the gentleman, something classic, heroic, but silent. He took a mask of dark metal from the shelf, covering the upper half of the face. Strict lines, no flamboyance. The Centurion, alloy with lead additives, blocks mind reading, if anyone here knew how to read minds. Declan took the mask. It was heavy. "How does it attach? There are no ties. Vacuum suction and microneedles," Renard smiled. "A little painful, but holds like death." "And for the lady?" Renard turned to me. You have a face searching. You don't want to hide. You want to see." He took a mask from a drawer under the counter that made my breath catch. It was a Venetian columbine, but made of semi-transparent cobalt glass and the finest silver filigree. The left eye socket was equipped with a set of interchangeable lenses, like a jeweler's. "The Visionary," he introduced. Carl Zeiss optics, enhanced with ether coating, allows you to see thermal traces and mechanism structures. I took the mask. The glass was freezing. "Price?" I asked. "A scan of your emotions while you wear it. The mask records everything. How your pupils dilate when you lie. How a nerve twitches when you fear. For me, it is a priceless archive." "Agreed." "Then put it on. The ball starts in 2 hours." I brought the mask to my face. "Wait," Renard raised a finger. "One rule. If you hear ticking inside your skull, take it off immediately. It means the mask is starting to replace your personality with its program. Do not let it take root." I nodded and pressed the cold glass to my skin. Click. Sharp pain pierced my temples. Microneedles entered the skin. The world blinked. When I opened my eyes, the shop's gloom vanished. Everything became crisp, sharp. I saw dust motes in the air. I saw Declan's thermal outline. He glowed with soft orange light. I saw the mechanism ticking in Renard's head, a complex network of gears glowing cold blue. I looked in the mirror. Clara Reed wasn't looking back at me. A cold, beautiful, and absolutely alien woman, with a face of blue glass and silver, stared back. My fear vanished. Its place was taken by a cold, calculated calm. "Perfect," Renard whispered, looking at the instrument readings. "Meet Countess Arkwright and her loyal companion." Declan put on his mask. It hid his scar,
making his face hard and impenetrable. He looked like a statue. He walked up to me and took my hand. His thermal trace was the only thing reminding me of life in this icy world. "You okay?" His voice sounded hollow from under the metal. "I see everything," I replied. My voice had changed too. It became clearer, more melodic, more artificial. "I see everything, where this world has seams." Renard opened the back door of the shop. "The carriage awaits. Welcome to the Cobalt Masquerade. Try not to shatter before midnight." We stepped into the night. Now we were part of the carnival.
The carriage provided by Renard didn't drive, it floated. The suspension was so perfect I couldn't feel the cobblestones. Or perhaps it was the mask. The visionary was rewriting my senses. The slight headache from the microneedles subsided, replaced by crystal clarity. I looked at the upholstery of the seat opposite. The lens in my left eye buzzed quietly, focusing. Glowing blue lines floated over the velvet. I saw the carriage frame, the springs in the seats, even the heat signature from Declan's body. "Stop scanning me," Declan grumbled. His voice under the centurion mask sounded muffled, like from a barrel. "I'm calibrating," I replied, blinking to dismiss the telemetry data. "Your pulse is 82. You're nervous." "I'm not nervous. I'm suffocating. This thing smells of copper and someone else's sweat. And I have zero peripheral vision. I'm a perfect target." "You're not a target. You are Count Arkwright. Keep your back straight." The carriage stopped at the Grand Hotel. A doorman in livery and a bulldog mask threw open the door. "Welcome, my lord, my lady. Your suite is ready." The room was aggressively luxurious. Heavy drapes, a clawfoot tub, a canopy bed that could fit a small army. On the table lay an indentation on thick cream paper with gold embossing. "His Grace Magister Valerius awaits you at the Cobalt Ball. First dance precisely at midnight." Declan threw the invitation onto the table. "First dance?" He turned to me, and the mask hid his expression, but I knew he was frowning. "Clara, I'm a mercenary. I know how to break bones, fly a plane, and drink cheap whiskey. I don't know how to waltz." "That's a problem." I walked to the mirror, adjusting the curls Renard had styled into an intricate updo. "If we don't step into the circle, we attract attention. Here, etiquette is more important than law. Refusing a dance is an insult to the Magister. Then we're dead. I'll step on your foot, we'll fall, and we'll be executed for clumsiness." I turned to him. In the light of the gas lamps, his black figure in the mask looked imposing. "Come to me." "Why?" "We're going to perform maintenance on your skills." He approached, shifting awkwardly in patent leather shoes. "Clara, this is stupid. Hand on the waist," I commanded. "Firm. You are the axis of rotation. Give me the other hand." He placed his palm on my waist. Even through layers of corset and velvet, I felt the warmth of his fingers. My mask immediately provided data. Subject temperature increased. Galvanic skin response, agitation. I mentally swiped the notification away. The waltz isn't art, Declan. It's physics. A two-body system orbiting a common center of mass. I took a step toward him. 1. Weight shift. Inertia pushes us back. He stepped back. 2. Lateral vector. We took a step to the side. 3. Closing the circle. We moved in the silence of the room. At first, he was wooden. His muscles, used to combat, expected an attack, not fluidity. "Don't fight gravity," I said quietly, looking into the slits of his mask. "Use it. I am your counterweight. If you fall, I fall. Trust the physics." Gradually, his movements changed. He stopped thinking with his feet and started feeling the rhythm of my body. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We spun faster. The hem of my dress whipped against his legs. He pulled me closer, too close for 1899 propriety. The hard metal of his mask touched the cold glass of mine. Clink. The sound was quiet, but it rang like an electric shock. We stopped. We were breathing heavily. I saw his eyes deep within the mask sockets, dark, dilated. "We'll manage," he said hoarsely. "If you lead." "I always lead," I replied, stepping back. My heart was beating so hard even the mask couldn't smooth out the adrenaline spikes. The winter palace of Ethelgard was made of ice and gold, or so it seemed. We ascended a wide staircase covered in a blue carpet. Around us flowed a river of silk, brocade, and gemstones. Hundreds of guests, and not a single face. The smell of wax, expensive perfume, and champagne was intoxicating. The orchestra on the balcony played something light, airy, but in the lower registers of the cellos, I heard a hidden threat. "Condition 1, Declan said quietly, offering me his arm. We entered the ballroom. It was a massive atrium with a glass dome, behind which, thanks to the time loop or magic,
shone stars that shouldn't be visible in a storm. In the center of the hall stood a giant clock mechanism, a column of gears and crystal reaching the ceiling. I activated the visionary lens. The world flared. Streams of guests colored differently. Living humans, about half, glowed warm orange. But the rest? They were cold. Blue frameworks, inside which pulsed clumps of energy. Violet, like the veil in the mountains. A waiter, carrying a tray of glasses. Cold. A lady, laughing at a cavalier's joke. Cold. A group of musicians. Cold. "Half of them are dead," I said softly, squeezing Declan's hand. "They are automata, very complex, but machines. And the other half, descendants of those stuck here, or prisoners." "His Grace Count Arkwright and the Countess," the master of ceremonies' voice boomed. He struck the floor with his staff. Conversations died. Hundreds of masks turned to us. Deep in the hall, on a dais, a man sat in a high-backed chair. He was dressed in a snow-white doublet. His face was hidden by a mask of pure gold, split in two. One half, a perfect human face. The second, an exposed clock mechanism. Magister Valerius. He rose slowly. "The Arkwrights." His voice was soft as velvet, but carried through the hall without a microphone. "We did not expect guests from the outer cold, but Ethelgard welcomes all who value time." He gestured with his hand. The orchestra struck up the opening of a waltz. "Show us," Valerius said, "if your hearts beat in the rhythm of our city." The crowd parted, forming a circle. We remained in the center. Declan placed his hand on my waist, firm, confident. "Two-body system," he murmured. "Let's go."
The music swept us up like a tidal wave. 1, 2, 3. Declan didn't falter. His hand on my waist was the rigid axis around which my world of green velvet revolved. We moved in perfect unison, cutting through the crowd of masks. I looked only at him. Through the visionary lenses, I saw the muscles of his shoulder tense, his pulse quicken. We were the only warm spots in this sea of cold porcelain and silk. "Don't look around," he said quietly. "Just keep the rhythm." When the music faded, the hall exploded in applause. But it was a strange sound, not palms clapping, but the clatter of hard wooden or ceramic surfaces. Clack, clack, clack. Magister Valerius approached us. Up close, his gold mask seemed liquid, shifting shape with every movement of light. "Exquisite," he uttered. "You dance with such animal passion, a rarity these days." He gestured, and two guards in blue uniforms silently appeared behind Declan. "Count, I assume you are tired of dancing. Gentlemen gather in the red salon for whist. You will find it more interesting there. And the Countess and I will discuss fashion." Declan tensed. I squeezed his hand, sending a silent signal. "Don't resist, not yet." "With pleasure," he gritted out, but the look he shot Valerius promised murder. Declan disappeared through a side door. I was left alone in a ring of faceless ladies. I began to slowly drift through the crowd, using the mask to scan faces. Automaton, automaton. Human, sleeping, automaton. There were too many machines here. Valerius hadn't just preserved the city, he had replaced its population. And suddenly, I smelled it. A delicate, sweet, powdery scent. Parma violets. My heart skipped a beat. The scent didn't belong to this world. It was the scent of my childhood, the scent of Mom's vanity table, which I was forbidden to touch. I turned my head. The visionary lens focused on a figure by the window. A woman in a pale lilac dress stood with her back to me, looking at the artificial stars. Her shoulders shook as if she were crying. I walked closer. My legs wouldn't obey. "Excuse me?" My voice trembled. The woman turned around. She wore a simple white half-mask covering only her eyes. But I would know that chin, those lips, that mole above the lip anywhere. Mom. As she was in the photograph from 1998, a year before she disappeared. Young, beautiful, alive. "Have you seen my glove?" she asked. Her voice was melodic, light, the voice that sang me lullabies.
I dropped it somewhere here. A white kid glove. Archibald will be angry if I lose it. Archibald. Father's name. Mom? I exhaled. I pulled off my mask, ignoring the pain from the microneedles and the risk of exposure. It's me, Clara. She looked at me. There was no recognition in her eyes, only slight, polite confusion. Clara? What a lovely name. I had a daughter, or will have. I get confused in time, dear. So, have you seen the glove? Archibald is waiting by the carriage. We are going to the opera. She repeated the same gesture, tucking a curl behind her temple, exactly as she had a second ago. You already mentioned the glove, I said, feeling horror rise in my throat. Mom, look at me. I grabbed her hands. They were warm. But under the skin of her wrist, where a pulse should beat, I didn't feel the throb of blood. I felt ticking. Fine, rapid, metallic ticking.
Program error. Mother's voice distorted for a second, becoming mechanical, then returned to normal. Have you seen my glove? Archibald will be angry. She doesn't hear you, Clara. I spun around. Valeria stood a step away. He had removed his gold mask. The left half of his face was the noble visage of an elderly man. The right was a complex mechanism of platinum and sapphire glass, under which gears spun, replacing muscles and bones. What did you do to her? I hissed. I saved her. Valerius approached my mother and adjusted the shawl on her shoulders. She didn't react. When your mother was dying of the same disease as Lily, your father gave up. He chose cryostasis for Lily, and I chose transference. This isn't transference. It's a doll with a recording of her voice. You are mistaken. Valerius touched my mother's temple. Her memory is here. Her habits, her love for violets. But the soul is a volatile substance. The ether evaporates. She skips like an old record. She needs stabilization. He turned to me. His mechanical eye contracted and dilated, focusing. I need Aegis, Clara. The implant your father embedded in Lily. It is the missing link. My automata are decaying. They need a conductor to become truly alive. Eternal. At that moment, a crash and the sound of shattering glass came from the red salon. Someone screamed. Declan, your friend seems to have breached etiquette, Valerius noted indifferently. The guard will tear him apart in a minute. Unless what? A deal. Valerius extended a gloved hand. You bring me Lily. I extract Aegis and use it to fix your mother, and the others. You get your family back, Clara. A living mother. A living sister. Without the implant, she will be just human, but I will cure her with alchemy. And your mercenary walks away alive. And if I refuse, then you stay here. As a donor of biological material for my new dolls. And your mother, he snapped his fingers. Mother froze. The light in her eyes went out, and she went limp, turning into a mannequin, goes to the smelter. The commotion in the next room intensified. A gunshot rang out, a sound that shouldn't exist in a world of swords. Declan had drawn his stash. I looked at my mother's lifeless face, then at Valerius's mechanical eye. A switch clicked in my head. Rationality returned. I needed time. Stop the guard, I said quietly. I need to talk to him. Valerius smiled with his human half-mouth. A reasonable choice. You have 1 hour. Until the next clock strike. He clapped his hands, and time seemed to start again. Mother switched on. Have you seen my glove? She asked hopefully. I stepped back, swallowing tears. No, Mom, but I will find it. I promise. I turned and ran toward the sound of gunfire. The red salon looked like a battlefield where two eras had collided. Velvet drapes were torn down, card tables overturned, the green baize littered with playing cards and shards of porcelain. Declan stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily. His frock coat was torn at the shoulder, knuckles skinned and bloody. In his hand, he gripped the leg of a heavy oak chair, using it as a club. At his feet lay 3 bodies, or what seemed to be bodies. One of the officers was trying to crawl. His head was unnaturally twisted, the porcelain mask shattered, and from beneath it, instead of blood and brain, brass gears spilled out and wires sparked. Clara! Declan looked up at me with a wild gaze.
They don't die. I break their necks and they just switch off. Drop it, I ran to him, stepping over a mannequin's hand, still clutching a revolver. Valerius gave us an hour. Truce. Truce? Declan threw the chair leg aside. That freak wanted to shoot me because I asked for whiskey without ice. They aren't people, Clara. It's a damn puppet show. Count and Countess, a voice rasped from the entrance. We turned. In the doorway stood the captain of the guard, a 10-foot automaton in a greatcoat with a face of blued steel. Behind him, a corridor of blue uniforms was visible. The Magister invites you to the lower level, so you understand the price of eternity. Declan twitched, but I grabbed his wrist. My visionary mask showed the guards' thermal signatures. There were at least 20 of them. Reactors in their chests glowed red. Combat mode. "We're coming," I said loudly. "Lead the way." We entered the elevator. It wasn't an elegant cage like upstairs, but a rough industrial platform. The guard pulled a lever and we began to fall. The gold and azure of the palace gave way to the black stone of the shaft. The air became hot, dry, tasting of metal. "Did you see her?" Declan asked quietly as we descended. "Yes." "Was it her?" "I don't know." I lied. The mask hid the movement of my eyes, but Declan knew me too well. He squeezed my hand but said nothing. The elevator stopped with a clang. The factory opened before us. If upstairs was heaven, this was purgatory. A vast cavern filled with rows of glass vats connected by pipes. Inside the vats bubbled a glowing blue substance. Ether. Along the walls stood tables laden with parts. Arms, legs, torsos, faceless heads. Hundreds of small mechanical spiders crawled over the tables, assembling, stitching, polishing. "Alchemical synthesis," the guard commented, leading us along a catwalk over the vats. "Flesh is weak. Time destroys memory. The Magister found a way to distill the soul and place it in an indestructible vessel." I engaged the mask's filter. I looked at the blue liquid in the pipes. It wasn't just energy. Faces flickered in the stream. Screaming mouths, frightened eyes. Hundreds, thousands of fragments. This wasn't preservation. It was fuel. Valerius wasn't saving people. He was grinding them down to sustain the existence of his elite upstairs. We walked to the end of the hall, to a separate section screened off. The guard stopped. "The Magister said to show you this." He pulled back the screen. There stood a row of mannequins, all copies of my mother. The first, crude, made of clay. The second, of wood, with a poorly carved face. The third, almost perfect, but with a crack across the forehead. She sat on a chair, monotonously repeating, "Clove, white clove, Archibald." My legs gave out. Declan caught me. "Jesus," he exhaled. "It's not her," I said, voice trembling. "It's a record that's skipping. He just copies her image, trying to fill the void inside. But there's no one there." "Not yet," answered the guard. "The Aegis implant will allow the matrix to anchor. Mother will become whole, eternal. Decide, Countess." We were led to a side room and the door locked. It was a luxurious sitting room, out of place in the industrial landscape. Velvet sofas, a fireplace, fruit on the table, a gilded cage. Declan immediately began checking the windows. They faced a solid cavern wall. The bars were as thick as an arm. "We're trapped." He punched the wall. "We have half an hour. Then he comes for the answer." I sat on the sofa, staring at a single point. Before my eyes was that third doll, and the living mother upstairs with her warm voice. Maybe he's right. My voice was hollow. If he fixes her, if he inserts Lily's chip, I'd have a chance to talk to her, to say I love her, to say goodbye for real. Declan froze. He slowly turned to me. "Are you serious right now?" "Lily has been in a coma for 20 years, Declan. She's a vegetable. But Mom, she can be brought back. Valerius is a genius. Mad, but a genius." Declan walked up to me. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me.
"Take it off,"
He growled. "What?"
"The mask. Take it off immediately. It's thinking for you."
I tried to push him away. "No, it helps me see the truth. I see structures. I see—"
You see what he wants you to see.
Declan yanked the clasps at the back of my head. "You're hurting me." He didn't listen. With a sharp click, he tore the visionary from my face. Micro-needles pulled out of my skin. Blood trickled down my temples. The world darkened. The cold, ringing clarity vanished. Fear, fatigue, and pain crashed down on me. And the smell of sulfur. I inhaled, gasping like a drowning woman, and looked at Declan. His face was pale, eyes burning with fury and fear. "You wanted to kill your sister to revive a doll," he said quietly, holding the mask in his hand like a venomous snake. "That's not you, Clara. You fix things. You don't trade lives." I covered my face with my hands. Tears flowed down my cheeks, mixing with blood. "I miss her so much, Declan. I want her to be alive so badly." He sat beside me and hugged me, tight until my ribs cracked. "I know, but that woman upstairs isn't her. It's a ghost in a machine, and we aren't letting that ghoul feed Lily to it." I pressed against the chest, listening to the beat of his heart. A real, living heart. "How much time do we have?" I asked, wiping my tears. 20 minutes. I raised my head. My gaze fell on the visionary mask lying on the floor. The lens was still glowing, projecting a beam onto the wall. The beam pointed at the fireplace. No, not at the fireplace. Behind the fireplace. Declan. I straightened, feeling my brain start working again. But now it was my brain. The mask. It shows energy flow. See? He looked. "I see a blue spot on the bricks. It's a main line. An ether pipe going to the main reactor. It runs right behind this wall." I stood up and walked to the fireplace. "Valeria said the city runs on energy. What happens if we cause a short circuit in the main artery?" Declan grinned. It was the mean, predatory smile I had fallen in love with on the island. Big boom. "And most likely this eternal ball ends. Do you have that pound powder left that you pulled from the shells in the cave?" "Every gram." "Then let's ruin this party."
Nitrocellulose would be better, Declan muttered, pouring gray powder from casings onto a silk handkerchief he'd torn from the sofa lining. "But black powder will do. The key is the seal." I watched his hands. They didn't shake. He rolled the fabric into a tight sausage, soaking it in expensive cognac from a crystal decanter. "Alcohol will slow the fuse burn," he explained, catching my eye. "Gives us 10 seconds to hide behind the overturned table." I approached the fireplace. The fire had long died out, but the embers still glowed. The visionary mask, lying on the floor, continued to project a beam onto the brickwork. The blue spot behind the wall pulsed. It was the city's aorta. "You understand what we're doing?" I asked quietly. "If we breach the pipe, the ether will burst out. It's like breaching a submarine hull at depth. The pressure will tear everything apart. Then we surface." Declan inserted the improvised bomb into a crack between the bricks, directly opposite the blue spot. "Ready?" I overturned the heavy oak table, creating a barricade. "Do it." Declan struck a match. The flame licked the cognac-soaked fabric. He dove behind the table, covering me with his body. "Ears!" Kaboom! It wasn't a loud explosion, a dull, visceral thud, but the consequences were instantaneous. The wall bowed out and burst. Bricks sprayed like shrapnel. And then came the whistle. A jet of blinding blue gas erupted from the breach. It hit the opposite wall, freezing and shattering velvet and wood. "The door!" Declan shouted. The lock melted from the shockwave of ether. The door was blown off its hinges. We tumbled into the corridor. Below, in the soul factory, chaos reigned. The energy supply system went haywire. Glass vats burst one after another. Blue liquid flooded the floor, and where it touched metal, a violent transmutation reaction began. Iron turned to rusty dust in seconds. The mechanical harvester spiders went mad. They ran in circles, sowing the air or attacking each other. The guards froze. Their blue eyes flashed stroboscopically. "Violation! Violo! 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 Violo!" Their voice modules jammed. "To the freight elevator!" I pulled Declan by his sleeve. "While it still works!" We ran along the catwalks over the boiling sea of ether. The heat was replaced by freezing cold, the paradox of carrying time fabric. One of the guards twitched and blocked our path. His manipulator arm spun chaotically. Declan didn't waste time fencing. He simply shoulder-checked the frozen 10-foot statue. The guard, having lost gyroscopic stability, toppled over the railing with a crash and fell into a vat of acid. We flew into the elevator and slammed the lever. The platform jerked and crawled upward, teeth grinding against the guides.
We emerged in the Winter Palace. The ball continued, but it was no longer a waltz. It was a cacophony. The orchestra played music backward. Violins screeched. Dancing couples moved in jerks, like puppets with tangled strings. Step, jerk, fall, step. Guests' masks cracked. Black, oily sludge oozed from under the porcelain. Lovely weather, isn't it? A gentleman without a lower jaw addressed us. Lovely weather. Lovely way. Don't look at them. Declan covered my view with his palm. Look for the exit. We need to get to the tower. The main doors were blocked by a crowd of twitching bodies. The only path to the tower lay through the second-floor gallery. We ran up the stairs and stopped. At the end of the gallery, blocking the way to the tower bridge, stood she. Mom. She wasn't twitching like the others. She stood absolutely still, hands folded over her stomach. Her dress was torn. The metal frame showed through the gaps. Her face, that same perfect mask, with a crack. Clara? Her voice was pure, warm, frighteningly normal. Where are you going? Archibald is waiting. We'll be late for the opera. I froze. It's not her, Declan said quietly. Clara, remember, it's a guardian. Did you not find my glove? The doll took a step toward us. Long blades, sharp as scalpels, extended from her fingers. Bad girl, you lost it. You always lose everything. She lunged at us. The speed was inhuman. Declan managed to bring up a candelabra he picked up. Clang. The blade sheared through the bronze like butter. Declan flew against the wall, knocked back by a blow from her other hand. Declan! The doll turned to me. Her face remained serenely affectionate. Come to Mommy. Let me fix your collar.
She raised the hand with the blades. I had no weapon, only the broken chair leg Declan had shoved in my belt and my cracked loop. And knowledge. I knew this mechanism. I saw the blueprints in the factory. The control crystal is at the base of the neck, where a human has the hollow between collarbones. Forgive me, I said softly. I found your glove, Mom. I stepped toward her, right under the raised blade. It was a risk, an insane risk, but the doll's program glitched. Hearing the code phrase about the glove, she froze for a split second. Her face flickered. Found it? That was enough. I drove the sharp chair leg into her throat, right into the soft joint of the plates. I leaned in with all my weight, driving wood into metal. A crunch echoed. The crystal shattered. The light in Mother's eyes went out instantly. She didn't fall. She just ended. The mechanism halted, turning into a heap of cold junk. I stood hugging this metal corpse, feeling oil flow over my hands, warm as blood. Clara. Declan was beside me. He gently pried my hands off the doll. The body crashed to the parquet. The head broke off and rolled away, smiling at the ceiling. I looked at my hands. They were black with oil. I killed her, I said hollowly, a second time. You freed her, Declan said firmly. He turned me to face the window. Look. I looked. The illusion of the night sky was crumbling. Through holes in the stars, the gray, raging chaos of a real blizzard broke through, and above it all, at the top of the clock tower, a beam of violet light pulsed. Valerius started a reset, Declan realized. He wants to roll back time before we arrived, erase us. He won't succeed. I wiped my oily hands on the hem of the velvet dress. Anger burned away the tears, because I'm coming for him. We stepped over the broken doll and ran to the tower bridge. Waltz time was over. Hammer time had begun.
The stairway to heaven didn't end. We ran up the spiral steps of the clock tower, but it felt like we were standing still. The air around us shimmered. Don't stop! Declan shouted. His voice reached me with a delay, as if through deep water. I looked at the walls. The stone was changing. 1 second, it was new, smooth, freshly hewn. I saw ghostly figures of workers in old-fashioned blouses laying the masonry. An instant, and the stone was covered in cracks, moss, crumbling to dust. The time loop was compressing, past and future collapsing into a single point, the point of now. We burst into the clock hall. There were no walls here, only dials. 4 huge glass discs facing the 4 cardinal directions. Behind them raged a real storm, but inside reigned perfect, sterile peace. In the center of the hall hovered the reactor. It was a sphere of rotating gold rings, inside which hung a crystal of pure cobalt the size of a human head.
and beneath it stood Magister Valerius. He had removed his doublet. His torso was bare, and I saw the truth. He was no longer human. His body was fused into the machine. Bronze cables exited his spine, connecting to the control console. His living half-face was twisted in ecstasy. The mechanical one spun at breakneck speed.
"You are late." His voice sounded from everywhere, reflecting off the glass of the dials. Cycle complete. Reset in 10 seconds. He raised his hand. Declan raised the rifle, which he had taken from that dead guard below. Shot. The bullet flew from the barrel and froze in the air a meter from Valerius's chest. It hung there, spinning like a top. "Time obeys me here," Valerius waved dismissively. The bullet fell to the floor with a clatter. "Declan, back!" I shouted. Declan didn't listen. He threw the useless weapon and sprinted forward, drawing his knife. Valerius didn't even flinch. When Declan was a step away, the Magister simply vanished and appeared behind Declan's back. Strike. Declan flew against the wall as if hit by a truck. He tried to stand, but Valerius gestured, and Declan froze, locked in time. I saw him trying to scream, but no sound escaped his throat. "And now you, Clara." Valerius turned to me. "You're a smart girl. Do you understand the beauty of this moment? We will erase the mistake of your arrival. Mom will be alive again, and you just won't be born. A merciful death."
I looked at the reactor. The cobalt crystal pulsed. It was pumping ether from the main line we had breached below, but the flow was unstable. Valerius was compensating for it with himself. He was the filter. He turned chaos into order. I needed to add chaos, so much that no filter could handle it. "You're right," I said, taking a step toward the console. "Time is beauty, but you forgot one thing, Magister." "What?" "Entropy." I snatched the shard of the visionary mask lens from my pocket, which I had kept, the razor-sharp edge of cobalt glass. I didn't attack him. I didn't break the machine. I slashed my own palm, deep, across the lifeline. Blood sprayed in a hot red stream. I slammed my bloody hand onto the rotating sphere of the reactor. "No!" Valerius's scream drowned out the machine's hum. Blood is not ether. It is organic. It is iron, salt, and water. But most importantly, it is mortality. It is time that flows only one way, toward the end. When my blood touched the pure ether field of the crystal, an annihilation reaction occurred. The gold rings screamed. The blue glow of the crystal turned crimson. Synchronization failed. "What have you done?" Valerius tried to yank the cables from his back, but it was too late. The machine, receiving a dose of mortality, began transmitting it to its operator. I recoiled, clutching my cut hand to my chest. Valerius screamed. His living half-face began to age. Skin withered, covered in liver spots, dried out, turning to parchment. Hair turned white and fell out. In seconds, he lived the century he had stolen. His mechanical half couldn't withstand the desynchronization. Gears burst, springs shot out through disintegrating flesh. "Stop this," he wheezed, turning into a mummy. "Time's up," I replied. Crack! The crystal in the center of the sphere exploded. The shock wave was invisible, but I felt it pass through me, like someone pulled the rug out from under reality.
The freeze on Declan lifted. He fell to his knees, greedily gasping for air. "Clara!" The tower's glass dials shattered simultaneously. Real wind burst into the hall, the freezing, roaring wind of the 21st century Alps. Snow, real snow, hit my face. "Move!" Declan grabbed me. The building around us began to change. Velvet turned to dust. Gold darkened and crumbled into rust. Stone disintegrated. The city was catching up to its real time. 100 years of decay happening right now. The floor beneath our feet gave way. We slid down a tilted slab that used to be the ballroom ceiling. Below, in the chasm, I saw beautiful Ethelgard turning into ruins. Roofs collapsed. Bridges fell into the abyss. "Window!" Declan pointed to a breach in the wall, revealing a mountainside buried in snow. We jumped. The flight was short. We slammed into a deep drift, rolling head over heels, mixing with snow and shards of roof tiles. The rumble behind us sounded like an avalanche. The clock tower, deprived of its core, folded in on itself, raising a pillar of centuries-old dust. We lay in the snow, watching the clouds settle. Silence. Only the whistling wind. No blue glow, no music, no masks.
Only gray, dead ruins in a ravine that looked as if no one had lived there for 100 years. Declan rolled onto his back and looked at the sky. It was gray, heavy, ordinary. He laughed, the hoarse, wild laugh of a survivor. "Well then, Countess Arkwright," he said, peeling off the remains of his shredded 19th century frock coat. The carriage turned into a pumpkin. I looked at my hand. The cut was still bleeding, staining the snow red. It hurt, but it was a good pain. The pain of a living person.
Zurich met us with the sterile whiteness of hospital walls, which irritated the eyes more than the blizzard. Official version: 2 hikers caught by an avalanche in a restricted zone, found by rescuers near the ruins of a medieval chapel. Dehydration, hypothermia, a lacerated wound on the woman's palm. We got lucky. The Swiss police didn't look for traces of explosives or ask why we were wearing rags of 19th century clothing. They wrote it off as the eccentricity of rich foreigners. We checked out 2 days later, not even waiting for the stitches to fully heal, because Boston called. "Miss Reed, your sister's vitals, they are impossible," the doctor's voice trembled. "EEG shows waking brain activity. Come immediately." The intensive care unit at St. Jude's Clinic was steeped in gloom. Monitors beeped. Beep, beep. The rhythm of life. I stood at the door, afraid to take a step. Declan put his hand on my shoulder. His fingers were warm, real. No gloves, no masks. "Go," he said softly. I approached the bed. Cryostasis was off, the glass dome raised. Lily was sitting up, leaning against the pillows. She was frighteningly thin, her skin almost transparent, but she was sitting by herself. IV tubes still ran to her veins, but the ventilator was gone. She was looking out the window at nighttime Boston. "Lily," I called. She slowly turned her head. 20 years of coma should have atrophied her muscles, erased her expressions, but her movements were fluid, if a little mechanical. But the main thing, her eyes formerly brown like fires, were now the color of a stormy sky, with a deep, unnatural blue rim around the iris. Cobalt color.
"Clara," she spoke. Her voice was raspy from disuse, but the intonation was adult, frighteningly adult for someone who fell asleep as a teenager. "I'm here, sweetie. I'm here." I fell to my knees by the bed, grabbing her hand. Her palm was cold. "You broke the clock," Lily said. It wasn't a question. The noise stopped. "Thank you. I did it for you, to get you out." Lily tilted her head, studying my face as if seeing it for the first time. "You got the body out, but my ticket is still punched." "What do you mean?" She shifted her gaze to Declan standing in the shadows. "The gentleman with the broken face," she said quietly. "He knows the way." "What way, Lily?" "The train." Her pupils dilated, swallowing the blue. "The morning express. It collects passengers evicted from time. I hear the whistle. It is approaching." She leaned back onto the pillows, closing her eyes. Strength left her as suddenly as it appeared. The monitors beeped steadily again, showing deep sleep, but not coma. Sleep.
I walked out into the corridor, feeling my knees shake. Declan was waiting for me by the coffee machine. He looked grim. "Did you hear?" I heard. He handed me a plastic cup. "The Morning Express. I thought it was a smuggler's tall tale." "You know what it's about?" "A legend about a train that runs on old European tracks only during the new moon. They say it carries things that shouldn't exist." Declan rubbed the scar above his brow. "If Lily's soul is stuck between worlds because of your father's and Valerius's experiments, maybe that train is the only place she can be intercepted." I pulled the shard of the blue lens from my pocket. It was dull, dead glass, but when I held it up to the light, a spark flashed deep inside. "We broke the cage in Ethelgard," I said, "but we didn't catch the bird. We just released it into the sky. Now we need to find it." Declan took my hand. There was no ring on his ring finger, but on mine there was now a thin scar from the cut, a ring of flesh and blood that bound me to reality tighter than any gold. "I don't know how to drive trains," he grinned, "but I learn fast. We don't need to drive it." I squeezed the shard in my fist, feeling a new purpose displace the fear. We need to rob it. Outside the clinic window, a subway train rushed by.
its whistle sounding like a distant, mournful call. The expedition continued.